The great John Solomon is live in Orlando, Florida, and America's Voice is covering the National Religious Broadcasters Convention down there, and John's been nice enough to jump on with us tonight. Mr. Solomon, how are you?
I'm great, guys. I think I wore the wrong outfit, though. I didn't know I was supposed to come in like a leopard skin. I could have changed.
You would look very, very good in leopard. I could see it happening. Maybe next time you're back here in the studio, you and Slick Rick can dress together.
People covering their eyes here just thinking about it. Yeah.
I don't think that's true.
Maybe some nice tiger stripes.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
There you go.
All right, John, lots to cover. Obviously, you're there at the National Religious Broadcasters. It just kicked off tonight. I saw Governor DeSantis was the first keynote speaker. We have a little bit of his speech tonight that I thought was excellent. But I know at 6 p.m. you had the privilege, of course, and you've broken some news tonight. We got a lot to get to, but let's talk about 6 p.m. on your show. You had the honor, of course, of having President Donald J. Trump on the show.
Right.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, Amanda and I were really lucky. He spent about 20 minutes with us. He wanted to talk about his record on religious freedom. A poll here at the kickoff of the NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters meeting, said that most Christians are worried most about preserving religious freedom. They feel like it's under assault, like no time in American history. They're right. And from the anecdotes we see day in and day out, President Trump wanted to talk about, remind people, just a few years ago, I made a lot of big changes. I sidelined the Jones Amendment, which kept churches from getting involved in politics. I appointed 3 justices to the Supreme Court that have repeatedly upheld religious freedom and, of course, overturned Roe v. Wade, a very big issue here at NRB. And he came in with something. Listen, we know abortion is going to be around. Some states are going to outlaw it. Some states are going to restrict it. Some states are going to grow it out to an industry like New York and California are doing now. President Trump said there's something we can do regardless of what the state law is, and that is to go and reduce abortions in America by creating tax credits, by creating a ready army of parents who can step into the void and say, I want to adopt a child. If there's a mom that's struggling between aborting my baby or keeping that baby, we're going to step into the void. So he talked about getting this army of parents lined up. They're trained, they're pre-approved for adoption, and creating tax credits on both sides of the adoption process so that a woman trying to make that very difficult choice has a friendly option to give that child to parents who've been pre-vetted and who can take great care of that child for their life. Very novel idea, something you've not heard on the presidential campaign trail from anybody else. That was really the big highlight from the interview today, guys.
Yeah, that is a very novel idea. I'll be interested to hear specifically what he said to you about it, because this is obviously a topic that, as we've talked about even when you were here last week, that he's taking maybe a little flack from the real conservative base of the party, seemingly moving left. He's been asked about abortion, where he sees it on a federal level, and he's kind of had hands off of it. Now, maybe he had this all along and he wanted to wait to roll it out. But what's your feeling on that? Do you think this is something that has been in the works, or something he's thought of since he kind of has been starting to be we all see abortion, how it's polled in some of these the midterms and obviously in 2020. And as you say, the Republicans are well aware that this is an issue they have to deal with. Do you think this is stemming from all of that, something recently that he's come up with? Where do you think this has come from?
Yeah, listen, I think everybody is trying to read the 2022 midterm elections, where abortion kind of threw Republicans off their winning game. They should have won more. Obviously, they captured the House. They're very happy about that. A lot of people thought they'd get the Senate, a larger House majority, maybe some governorship that they didn't get. The party's struggling with messaging. He came with 2 very important messages. For those who think that he's waffling on abortion or he's moved to the left on abortion, he said, listen, without me, you don't get Roe v. Wade reversed, and you don't have a seat at the table. For 50 years, no Christian could really negotiate because the law of the land was abortion's legal. I made it possible for states to ban it, restrict it, or allow it to happen. That's a seat that Christians and evangelicals and people of faith did not have at the table. So his way of blunting the criticism is, listen, I'm the guy that made it possible. If you don't get those 3 Supreme Court justices, that decision isn't overruled. Then he goes on to say, listen, the place where I think I've been thinking a lot about is I worry about states that are moving on outright bans of abortion, not making an exception for incest or rape. I think there ought to be a level of compassion there. We don't want to kill more babies, but we also want to understand there are some women that had a really difficult, traumatic experience. We ought to consider that. And then meanwhile, we can do something. No matter where your state ends up on this continuum of banning to allowing abortion and everything in between, restricting it. We can create this adoption program, this army of parents ready to step in the void, and we can bring abortions down. Who's not for bringing the number of abortions down in this country? I think he found a very good spot that was very well received here at the NRB. People were listening intently in the crowd as we were interviewing. I think he's been doing a lot of thought, and tonight was sort of his crystallization of where he stands post the 2022 midterms.
It'll be interesting, John. I mean, the word is, again, that we're going to maybe get an announcement. We got Tim Scott today. We might get an announcement from the governor of Florida this week. That's what the word is. He was there tonight. I listened to his speech, and he rightly points out, because of President Trump, the Supreme Court obviously now sits the way it does ideologically, but he also brings up a very good point that certainly President Trump is also aware of, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear him talking about this soon as well, that over the next 2 presidential terms, it's very possible that you could have a Clarence Thomas and a Justice Alito both be looking at maybe retiring over the next 8 to 9 years.
Right.
So given all the stakes that we already know 24 poses, as you said, basically a life-changing election, that is something that also will be on the forefront of every conservative's mind. President Trump put out a list and said, here's the list I'm going to pick from last time.
Right.
Do you suspect he will do that again?
Yeah, absolutely. You can see, and also tonight I heard something very interesting in Ron DeSantis' speech, which was very warmly received here. He said, listen, if we play this right, we could have a 7-2 conservative majority in the future. He's already playing down the road as a young governor in his 40s, thinking about a 25, 30-year play on the court. President Trump clearly has a proven record. He's the only one person in the race that will have a record of appointing 3 justices. In fact, he's the only president in recent constitutional history who got 3 justice appointments through in a single term. So very interesting thing. I think another thing, Amanda, who was with me, had this incredible question. One of the things, sir, if you win a second term, you're really never going to have to run for re-election again. That's very liberating. And President Trump said, there's 2 things I'm going to bring to the table if I run. One, I already learned from my first term. I know who the bad guys are, the good guys are, the tactics I could use to be a better president, and I never have to worry about running for re-election. I can be the conservative I want to be without thinking about any other election. Very interesting moment in their interview. You understand he's been thinking about the moment and the rarity of coming back for a second term after being out of office maybe for 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to be welcome news to the conservative base to hear that kind of speak from him as well. We talked about it when you see the Durham report. It's almost a motivating factor to say, I don't know who else but Trump is the man for this moment, given what we're facing in the alphabet gangs in this country and what they're doing. And speaking of that, that's a good lead into what just hit, I believe, over at justthenews.com. Headline, IRS Whistleblower alleges sweeping retaliation over concerns about Hunter Biden investigation. The supervisory special agent has filed a complaint contending that he was sidelined from the case over which he made protected disclosures. Tell me about this.
Yeah, this is a very important development. Apparently, not only is there an IRS criminal supervisory agent who's seeking whistleblower protection, there are agents beneath him that also believe they were retaliated against because they were reporting concerns that they weren't allowed to fully investigate Hunter Biden. And so these 3 letters were made public by Just the News just a little bit ago. One of them goes to the Office of Special Counsel. That's the chief whistleblower office in America. The supervisory criminal investigative agent, the guy who started the whole whistleblower claim about a month ago, a story I think we broke on your show, that he has now gone to the Office of Special Counsel saying, I was denied a promotion, I've suffered retaliation. We need you to become involved now because the supervisors at the Justice Department and the IRS are not abiding by the law. But in the narrative that the agent's lawyer tells both Congress and the Office of Special Counsel, he reveals that there are multiple agents who believe that they were blocked from doing the normal steps you would bring in a criminal tax case like they were investigating Hunter Biden for. Constant blockages, constant thwarting of their normal skills that they would apply to any tax case regardless of who the person was. And every time they brought it to their leadership at the IRS, no one cared. No one listened. In fact, sometimes they said threatening comments or threatening actions were taken against them when they tried to escalate these concerns. This whistleblower case, which we thought was starting with one guy in the IRS, a bunch of guys at the FBI that we know from Jim Jordan, may be much larger. We may have 2 or 3 or 4 additional whistleblowers blowing the whistle on Hunter Biden-related tax issues. A very hot summer for the Biden White House, I think, ahead.
Yeah. It's funny how all of this is kind of coming together. You see this. I heard Jim Jordan. You hear about him using the power of the purse. And, of course, right now you have the debt ceiling power of the purse,
right,
and the president threatening really what would be a grave attack against separation of powers in the Constitution, somehow claiming rewriting the 14th Amendment, that somehow he has the power here to get around the debt ceiling, which I've been talking about he's going to do for months. But I guess the question is, where does all this go, John? Merrick Garland keeps sitting in front of Congress testifying under oath, I believe, that David Weiss has free reign to do what he wants. I mean, it seems to me that that's shaping up to just not be the case.
Yeah, listen, I think we got to get more facts and evidence. We don't know what David Weiss and his involvement has been. Maybe he's been listening to these whistleblowers, not responding to them. Maybe there's other people involved. We were told that there were 2 other U.S. attorneys' offices that might be involved in this. I think we're going to get those facts as early as next week. I believe the IRS whistleblower could be interviewed by Congress as early as this Friday, certainly next week. Once he gives his private testimony, the committee, the Ways and Means Committee, chaired by Jason Smith, can release the testimony to the public, and we'll get the actual facts. Now, it won't be his lawyers and letters and leaks talking about this. It'll be his actual words. I think that will be a very big moment. I think the questions and the facts that we're missing in the narrative right now we'll have in about a week or 10 days.
All right. Well, I hope they have all their stuff together, and I hope they talk to Matt Taibbi before they do this, because I can expect they're all going to get visits at their house probably the day that they do that. So the great John Solomon live at the National Religious Broadcasters in Orlando, Florida, live. And, of course, Real America's Voice will be there over the next couple of days covering it. John, as always, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, my friends. Good to be with you.
The great John Solomon live from Studio 6B.